Okay, so here we are in 11.3. We're solving a square root equation. So what do you do when you have a square root with an equal sign? So we have here, you have to 2 power both sides, and you have to check your answer. So I'm going to 2 power both sides. Over here, the rooting and the 2 power are opposites. They cancel. Over here, this is going to be 9x squared because you square the 3, square the x. Okay. Now, we're in a whole new mode. Now we have an x squared equation. What do you do when you get x squared? Remember, you get a 0. You try to factor. If it won't factor, you use the quad. So jump these guys over. 9x squared minus 8x minus 1, like that. And then you can use the quadratic formula or try to factor. I think I'll just go into the quad right away here. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So a is 9, b is minus 8, c is minus 1. Okay, so negative b. Now careful here, it's negative b, and b is also negative 8, so it's negative 8. It's going to end up being positive, right? B squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay, so what's that? So like we said, it's positive 8 plus or minus the square root of 64. Minus times positive times minus is plus 36. 4 times 9 is 36 over 18. So what's that? That's 8 plus or minus the square root of 100 over 18, which is 8 plus or minus 10, right? Square root of 100 is just 10. So, in fact, let me just bring that up here. So we have 8 plus 10 over 18 and 8 minus 10 over 18, right? The two options. So that's 18 over 18, or 1. This is minus 2/18 or minus 1/9. So those are our two answers, 1 and minus 1/9. Right, I just divided this one by 2, top and bottom. So is that making sense so far? So I use the quadratic formula, got to here. 8 plus or minus 10 over 18, because the square root of 100 was just 10. Then I did the two options here, 8 plus 10 and 8 minus 10, both over 18. That's 18 over 18, 1, and then minus 2 over 18, which reduced to be minus 1/9. Now we can't forget, these have to be checked. Probably one of them is a bad answer. Usually the negative one's bad and the positive one is good, and that's exactly what we're going to see here. Let me prove it to you. So I got to go to the check, new screen to check. So I'm going to check the first one, which is x equals 1, right? And then over here, I'll check the second one, which is x equals minus 1/9, which will be a bad answer. Check what? To the original equation. So 3x, let's write it out here, 3x equals the square root of 1 plus 8x. Plug in the 1. Plug in the 1, so 3 times 1, square root of 1 plus 8 times 1, that's 3. This is square root of 9, that's true, 3 equals 3. So that one's a keeper. The other one's not going to work. Let's see it. So we're checking 3x is the square root of 1 plus 8x. Put in minus 1/9 there and there. 3 times minus 1/9 is the square root of 1 plus 8 times minus 1/9. And so that's that. Whenever you have a whole number, put it over 1. So that's minus 3/9. 1 minus 8/9. Right, again, 8 over 1. 8 goes to the top. Positive times negative. So what is that? This is minus 1/3. This is the square root of 1 minus 8/9. What do you do with that 1? That's 9/9 minus 8/9, right? That 1 is 9/9. So that's the square root of 1/9. Right? 9/9 minus 8/9 is 1/9. Square root of 1/9, square root of 1 is 1, square root of 9 is 3. That's not true. No, minus 1/3 does not equal positive 1/3, so that answer is no good. The only answer is 1, so x equals 1 is the only answer. Okay, so again, with a square root and an equals, what do we always do when we have a square root and an equals? We 2 power both sides, and step 2, we need to check. And so I'm going to go 2 power, like that. And on this side, it's easy, just tears off the root. On the other side, we got to write 2 of them, and it FOILs x squared plus 6x plus 6x plus 36. So that's x squared plus 12x plus 36. What do we do? Now we go into a whole new mode again. We've got x squared with an e. What do we always do when we see x squared? We get a 0, and we can try to factor, or we can use the quadratic formula, right? So I got to get a 0, so I've got to subtract 49x. Getting the hang of that? Whenever x squared shows up, you get a 0 first. And then you try to factor or use the quad. So we get 0, oops, here's my pencil here, 0 equals x squared minus something, 37x plus 36. Okay? And now that is actually factorable. Let's go ahead and do it. Remember, you're looking for what multiplies to be 36, adds to be minus 37. Do the diamond. Multiplies to be 36, adds to be minus 37. What times what's 36? 1 times 36. How can it add to be minus 37? Both negative, right? 2 negatives multiply to be positive, add to be negative. So that's x minus 1, x minus 36. So set each one equal to 0 separately, right? Remember, each one can be 0. If 2 things multiply to be 0, 2 things are timesing to equal 0, either one could be 0. So then finish it up, move the 1 over here, x is positive 1, and move that over there, or x is, positive 36. Positive 36. Positive 1 or positive 36. All right, so, but, that has to be checked, right? We can't forget any problem that starts with a square root. Any problem starting with a square root must be checked. Usually the lower answer is bad, but not always. Sometimes they're both good. I think they might both be good on this one. So come over here. I'll go to a fresh screen to check it. So I'm going to check x equals 1 first off. All right, with what? With the original. Always with the original. Square root of 49x is x plus 6. Right, yep. Plug in 1 right there, plug in 1 right there. That's the square root of 49 times 1 is 1 plus 6. That's the square root of 49 is 7. 7 equals 7. Yeah, that worked. Okay, let's check the other one now. The other one is 36. Let's check that one. And where do we check? Back in the original, which is right there. Square root of 49x. So square root of 49x equals x plus 6. So put in the 36. Put it in the 30, so the square root of 49 times 36 is 36 plus 6. I do not know. This is going to be, I think this comes out 42 if you use your calculator. Yeah, because the square root of 49 is 7. Square root of 36 is 6. 7 times 6, 42. 36 plus 6, 42. Yeah, they're both good. So both x equals 1 and 36 worked. There's actually 2 answers. Notice they both work. Both answers are good on this one. Okay, so this one has denominators. What do we do when we have fractions? What do we always do when we have fractions? Multiply by the LCD, right? So here we have a denominator and here we have a denominator. So what's the LCD? It's both of them. So you need x and x minus 1. X and x minus 1. Whoops. X and x minus 1. Okay. So what happens? The x's here cancel. So we're left with 9 x minus 1 plus, and then here x minus 1's cancel. 1 times x is x. And out here we're going to have 9x, x minus 1. So distribute 9x minus 9. Distribute 9x squared minus 9x. Okay, gather terms. 9x and x is 10x. So what should we do now? Well, remember when x squared with an equal sign, whenever x squared shows up, what do? Get a 0. Get a 0. You can try to factor, or you can just go right into the quadratic formula. So I'm going to get a 0. Get a 0 where? On the opposite side from x squared. So get rid of all this stuff. Whatever you do to one side, you have no choice but to do the same thing to the other. Gone, gone, 0. This is 9x squared minus 19x plus 9. So we got a 0. And I'm not going to try to factor. I don't like to factor when there's a number in the front. That's the slide and divide, and that's kind of a big pain. So I'm just going to do the quadratic formula. Go to a fresh screen over here. So we have 0 equals 9x squared minus 19x plus 9. Okay, plug into the quad, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this is a, b is minus 19, c is 9. Plug them in. So negative, careful, it's negative b, and b is itself negative, so it's negative 19. That's 2 negatives positive. Plus minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Alright, let's simplify that. 2 negatives here became positive 19 plus or minus square root of 19 squared. Is that 381 or 361? Okay. 361 minus 81 times 4. 4 times 9 times 9 is 324 over 18. Okay, that's 19 plus or minus the square root of, what is that, 37? Okay, over 18 there. That's it. That's our final answers. There's no need to check this one because the original question, you see, didn't have any square roots, right? There was no root anywhere in the original question. It's only problems that begin with a root, a square root, that need to be checked. This problem does not need to be checked. These are our 2 answers. That's 2 answers, right, with the plus and the minus option. Okay, so on this one, this one I'm going to do a little trick on to make it easier. I'm going to factor it. So if you factor p to the 4th minus 81, I'm going to factor it. It's p squared plus 9 minus 9. Right? Remember that? That was called difference of squares. You know, if you FOIL that out, p squared times p squared would be p to the fourth. Powers added. 9 times 9, positive 9 times negative 9 would be negative 81. And the middle term would cancel out. So that's good. Okay, now what do we do from there? Well, if two things are multiplying to equal 0, you know that either one could be 0 to make that happen. So the first one equals 0, or the second one equals 0. So either one could equal 0 to make that happen. So let's try to finish it from there. So how are we going to finish that now? How do you solve when you just have p squared and no p to the first power? Just get the p squared alone and do the root plus or minus root. Remember that? So just move that 9 over. P squared is minus 9. Same thing here. Move that one over. P squared is plus 9. And then you put the root over, plus or minus. Root over, plus or minus. And the rooting cancels the squaring. The rooting cancels the squaring. So you get p alone, plus or minus. And what does a negative inside a root always do? Throws out an I, and then the square root of 9 is 3. Same thing over here. Plus or minus, but there's no negative in the root, it's just square root of 9 is 3. So we get 4 answers. It's plus or minus, I'm just going to write this as 3i, I3, 3i, same thing, and plus or minus normal 3. 4 answers. There we go. Okay, so now this one is harder. Let me tell you what you do on this. When you have x to the fourth, or weird powers like x to the 2/3, here's what you do. Step 1, let w equal the middle. So w is x squared, the middle x power. So w equals x squared, or w equals x to the 1/3, depending on the problem. In our case, w is going to be that. So I'm going to rewrite this problem, and w is going to take the place of x squared, and w squared equals x to the 4th. Do you see why that is? So what I'm doing, I know this probably seems very weird to you at first. It's kind of like calling something by a new name. I'm going to call x squared by the new name w. You'll see why in a minute. So I'm just giving it a new name. Hey, I'm calling you w now. Every x squared, everywhere I see you, I'm going to call you w now. So right here, x squared, you're now called w. You can do that. You can change letters, but you have to be consistent. So if x squared is w, then twice that power, x to the fourth, has to be w squared. That's consistent. So over here, x to the 4th has to become w squared. Why? Because I let x squared be w, so then twice as big as that power, x to the 4th, has to be w squared. That's consistent. You can change letters as long as you're consistent, right? If the middle one is w, the front one's twice as big, it's got to be w squared. Okay, now why did I do that? Because 4th power was hard. I can't really deal with 4th power. But now that I made this change, now it's just a 2nd power equation. Now here's the trick though. When we're going to solve this w 2nd power equation, and when we're done, we're going to have to still go back to the very beginning and find x. The change is temporary. We'll see. So it'll still help us a lot though. So now let's solve this w squared. How do we solve this w squared equation? Well, you know how to solve squared, right? What's the step for solving squared? Bring this over, get a 0. So we'll get 9w squared plus 17w minus 2 equals 0. Solve that thing with the quad. So negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is a, this is b, this is c. That's why it's important to get a 0, because c is actually negative 2 when you bring it over and get a 0. All right, plug stuff in. Negative b, negative 17, plus or minus square root of b squared, minus 4 times a times c is negative 2 all over 2a. All right, what's that? So that's negative 17 plus or minus 17 squared, I believe, isn't that 289? Yeah, 289. Negative 4 times positive 9 times negative 2. Two negatives, positive, 72 over 18. Okay, so let's go to a fresh screen. So I got negative 17 plus or minus the square root of 289 plus 72 all over, was it 18? Yeah. Okay, so keep going, minus 17 plus or minus, add those in my calculator, 361 all over 18. And so that's minus, whoops, we can stay with the same colors here. Okay, so that's minus 17 plus or minus. Now, root of 361, just do that in your calculator, that's just 19. So that, now remember, when that just becomes a plain number, when the root vanishes, because it was a clean root, the root of 361 is just 19, then you break it into the two options, right? The root is gone, so we can just add and subtract and finish up those numbers. Minus 17 plus 19, what's that? 2/18, which is 1/9, and minus 17 minus 19 is minus 36 over 18, which is minus 2. So I got those two answers. Now, careful. I'm not done. Why not? Because those are two answers to what equation? Let's go back. Let's go back in time and see what equation led to those two answers. It was this equation, right? That's when I used the quad. I just solved W equations. So those are W answers. In other words, we now know that W equals 1/9 or W equals minus 2. That's W because here we had the W equation, we used the quad, and we got our answers. Now, why is that a problem? So what? Okay, that's W. Well, the original question was not W. It was X. They want me to find what X equals. So now I've solved the, remember I changed to the new letter W. I just solved the W equation. Now, at the very end, I've got to go back to my original letter X. How do I do that? Remember the relationship? Remember what it started it all off right here. W equals X squared, right? We let the middle X squared be W. So what is W? It's X squared. So when they say W is 1/9, that means X squared is 1/9. When they say W is negative 2, that means X squared is negative 2, right? That was the change we made. We changed to the different letter W. W is X squared. We just called it by a new name. We said, hey, X squared, wherever we see you, we're going to call you W now. And then X to the fourth, twice as big, had to be W squared. We solved for W, but then at the that's just the middle, so it's like a sandwich. You start with X, do the W work in the middle, and then at the very end you go back to X, like bread on the top and the bottom, meat in the middle. We start with X, do W in the middle, go back to X at the end. W is X squared. That's what we did right there. W is X squared. So W is 1/9 means X squared is 1/9, and W negative 2 means X squared negative 2. So now we finish up. How do you finish up X squared is 1/9? What do you do to solve? You put the roof on the house, up and down the ladder, rooting cancels squaring. So X is plus or minus square root of 1 is 1, square root of 9 is 3. There's two answers for X. And then we do the same thing over here. X squared is minus 2. Put the roof on the house, up and down the ladder. Rooting cancels squaring. X is, now what does a negative inside a root do? Kicks out an I. Plus or minus I root 2. There's our 4 answers. Plus or minus 1/3 and plus or minus I root 2. So you see the trick there? When they give you x to the 4th, or later we're going to do x to the 2/3, you let w be the middle, change to w, solve your w equation, get your 2w answers, because that made it easier, right? That changed it from 4th power to just 2nd power. It was easier, and I could solve it with the quadratic formula. I couldn't solve a 4th power, but a 2nd power, when I changed it to 2nd power, that made it easier. Solved for w, got my 2w answers, and then said, now what was w? Oh yeah, it was x squared. Then go back to x squared, finish it up. It's a trick. Okay, so this one is going to be a lot of work. So I'm going to write 5x plus 1 twice. Distribute here. 2 times 5x is what? 10x plus 2 minus 3. Then FOIL this out. 25x squared plus 5x, boom, boom, plus 5x plus 1, and then all of this plus 10x plus 2 minus 3 equals 0. Look at that. What a bunch of mess, huh? Let's gather like terms. Boom. So 25x squared. 5x is 10x, and 10x is 20x. 1 plus 2 is 3 minus 3 is 0. Oh, that was nice. That just vanished. 1 plus 2 is 3 minus 3 is 0. All right. So now how do we solve an x squared equation? Remember? Step 1, get a 0. Well, we've already got a 0. Step 2, try to factor. Now, how do you factor this one? This one is not 3 terms, is it? It's just 2 terms. You factor by taking out what's in common. What's in common? What goes into 25x squared and 20x? It's going to be 5x, isn't it? Well, it's 5x plus 4. Right? If you multiply that, it'd be 25x squared, and that'd be 20x. Good. And then remember, you try to factor, and each one gets their own 0. So that means 5x alone gets 0, or 5x plus 4 is 0, right? Because if 2 things are multiplying to equal 0, either one could be 0. Finish that up, divide by 5. 0 over 5 is just 0. Move the 4 over. Divide by 5. So our answers are 0 and minus 4/5. No need to check anything because the problem did not start with a root, did it? Those are the only ones we need to check. Okay, this is a pretty hard one. What do you do when you have fractions? You multiply by the LCD, huh? We've got this denominator and that denominator. So what's the LCD? Well, it's the bigger one, the squared. So we multiply through by 5x minus 3 squared. 5x minus 3 squared. And 5x minus 3 squared. So what becomes of that? Well, right here, 5x minus 3 squared times 1, that's just 5x minus 3 squared, minus. Here, this cancels one of these, leaving us a single 5x minus 3 to the first power, huh? Equals, and here they totally cancel, and we just have 20. Does that make sense? Now let's take it from there. This is going to be 5x minus 3, 5x minus 3, right? This breaks into 2 of them. Now this minus sign, boom, boom, minus 5x plus 3. And then we're going to FOIL this out. Boom, boom. 25x squared minus 15x, boom, boom, minus 15x plus 9, and then these parts, minus 5x plus 3 is 20. All right, a lot of terms. Let's gather like terms. 25x squared minus 15 is minus 30, and 5 more is minus 35x. 9 and 3 is 12 equals 20. Okay, what should we do now? What do we do when we have an x squared with an equal sign? Step 1, get a 0, right? So I've got to come in here and go minus 20, minus 20. Whenever you got x squared, you got to get a 0. So what does that leave me? 25x squared minus 35x minus 8 equals 0, right? Okay, so now what are we going to do? It's quadratic formula time. I'm going to take it to a fresh screen. In fact, how about, can I just go dot, dot, dot at this point? Just do the quadratic formula, and you get your answers. Okay, so here's another one of these x to the fourth. What do we do when we have x to the fourth, or in a little bit we're going to have x to the 2/3? Step 1, you let w equal the middle, x squared. Step 2, solve the w equation. Step 3, go back to solve x equals w squared. Or I'm sorry, to solve w equals x squared. So that's the 3-step plan. So here we go. So I'm going to let this middle is going to become w, x squared is going to become w. You always let the middle be w. And then the front is twice as big, right? X to the fourth is twice as big as x squared. So if the middle is w and the front's twice as big, the front's got to become w squared. So this will become w squared minus 10w plus 21 equals 0. So now we got to solve that. How do we solve that? Well, we can factor, right? What multiplies, right? Because there's no number in the front here, so those are easy to factor. When there's a number in the front, I use the quadratic formula, but if there's no number in the front, we can just factor. I'll do it over here. What numbers multiply to be positive 21 and add to be minus 10? What times what? 21. 3 times 7 is 21. How do they add to be negative 10? Both negative, right? Two negatives multiply to be positive 21, add to be negative 10. So there it is. So it's w minus 3, w minus 7. That's a 3 there. So how do you finish solving that? Remember, each one gets their own 0. Two things multiply to be 0. Either one could be 0. Jump it over, jump it over. W is positive 3 or positive 7. Now, that's all step 2. Solve for w. Right? Step 1, let w be x squared. And now step 3 is go back. Go back and finish. So what is w? What was it from the beginning? It was x squared. So this w goes back to being what it originally was, in both cases, x squared. So now finish solving for x. How do you do it? Roof on the house, up and down the ladder. So x is plus or minus root 3. Same thing here. Roof on the house, up and down the ladder. X is plus or minus root 7. There's our 4 answers. Okay, so this one is just a long, tedious problem. We're going to write x plus 3. Over here, the 9 distributes. 9x plus 27. Here, FOIL. X squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9. 27 minus 9, minus 18 is 9. Gather like terms, x squared plus 6x plus 9, 9x plus 9. What do we do, when we have x squared with an equal? Step 1, get a 0. So I got to get a 0, so subtract 9x, subtract 9. Subtract 9x, subtract 9, gone. 0. This is x squared minus 3x, and these cancel. All right, that's easy to finish. Just factor out x, right? Because step 2 is factor. I mean, if you can, this one can factor. X times x minus 3, just take out an x. So then each one equals 0. X alone is 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. Jump it over. So x is 3. So the answers are 0 and 3. We're done. That one came out nicely. Okay, so here we are with a weird one. Remember I said if you have x to the 4th or x to the 2/3, weird powers, high powers or weird powers, what do? You let w be the middle. What's the middle in this case? X to the 1/3. See, it's always the middle. And then w squared in the front will be the 2/3 because it's twice as big, right? If w is x to the 1/3, then w squared, twice as big, is x to the 2/3. So this must be w squared in the front, w in the middle. That's how these will always be. These 4th power, super high powers, or weird powers like 2/3, it's always going to be w in the middle, w squared in the front. So remember, you change to w. So then we get w squared plus 7w plus 12 equals 0. So we change to w, solve for w, and then we'll go back to the original x. How do you solve that right there? That's factoring, isn't it? You can do a little diamond. What multiplies to be 12 adds to be 7? Multiplies to be 12 adds, what times what is 12? 3 times 4, both positive. Multiply to be 12, add to be 7. So that's x plus 3, x plus 4. Oh, sorry, w. We're in w now. We're not in x. We're in w. Forgot we changed to w, all right? And then you set each one equal to 0. Separately, remember, move it over, move it over. That's -3, -4. So now I'm done with the w work. Solve for w. Now remember step 3. Back to x. Well, how do you do that? Well, what was the original changing rule? W is x to the 1/3, right? Same rule as here. Just go back. Say, oh, okay, I got to go back to x now. This w, that was just a false name we were using for a while. W is really x to the 1/3. This w here is also x to the 1/3. Okay. Now what? That's weird. What do we do? Well, think about what we're trying to do now. We're trying to get regular x, aren't we? Normal, plain, regular x. We don't want that weird 1/3 power on it. We just want regular x. Well, okay, that's our goal. Get regular x. What does regular x mean? I mean, what power is really on regular x? 1, huh? So in other words, we want to take that 1/3 power and somehow make it into 1, because x to the 1 is regular x. That's our goal, find regular x. So we got to get rid of that 1/3 power or change that 1/3 power to become a 1. Well, how do you do that? How do you make that become a 1? Well, if you raise both sides to the 3rd power. You see why? Because what's 3 times 1/3? It's 1. That'll make it x to the 1, regular x, you see. And now what's the other side? -3 times -3 times -3, right? 3rd power, which is -27. Okay, so that's one of our answers. Let's do the same thing here. How do you make this one into regular x? Same thing, 3rd power, 3rd power. These guys, 1/3 times 3 makes x to the 1, or just x. What does the other side do? -4. Get this out of the way here. -4 times -4 times -4. That's -64. There's our two answers. Oops, I can't write it over there. -27 and -64. -27 and -64. Tricky problem. Okay, so again, what do you do with x to the 2/3? Step 1, you let w equal the middle one, and w squared is the front, the x to the 2/3, right? So you let the middle one be w, and then the front x, which is 2/3, is twice as big as 1/3. So if the middle x to the 1/3 is w, then x to the 2/3 being twice as big has got to be w squared. So this will become 2w squared plus 9w plus 10 equals 0. So that's step 1. You let W be the middle and W squared's in the front. What we always do for these weird powers like 2/3 or big powers like 4th power, because we can't really deal with them until we change them to W. Now we solve for W. How are we going to solve this for W? I'm going to use the quad, because whenever we have a number in the front, factoring's hard, so I just use the quad. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Remember, whatever answer we get is going to be a W answer. I'm solving a W equation right now, aren't I? So what am I going to get for this W equation? So this is a, b, and c. So negative b, negative 9, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. All right, so what's that? Negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 81 minus, what's that? 4 times 2 is 8 times 10, 80 all over 4. Bring that up here. That's, or here, let's just go to a fresh screen. Well, here, I'll do one more step right here. This is minus 9 plus or minus square root of 1 over 4, isn't it? Yeah. So, let's go. So this is W. Remember, this is W equals minus 9 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 4, right? This is all W work. You know, we're solving for W right now because we changed to W. So let's finish finding W. Now that's minus 9. Square root of 1 is just 1. So I'm going to make the two options. Right? Square root of 1 is just 1. So it's minus 9 plus 1 and minus 9 minus 1. What is that? That's minus 8/4, minus 2, minus 10/4, minus 5/2, right? I just divided by 2, top and bottom. So I get two answers for W, minus 2 and minus 5/2. That's step 2. Now step 3, you go back to x. How? Using the original substitution. W is x to the 1/3. So now this W, it's x to the 1/3. And this W is x to the 1/3. All right, so now what? We're almost there. We want to turn this into normal x, which is x to the 1st power. How do we do that? Raise this to the 3rd, because 3 times the 3rd is 1. Normal x. Whatever you do to one side, you have no choice but to do the same thing to the other. 3rd power also. So minus 2 times minus 2 times minus 2, x equals minus 8. Same thing on the other side. 3rd power, 3rd power. 3 times the 3rd is 1, x to the 1, normal x, minus 5/2, minus 5/2, minus 5/2. Just use your calculator. 3 negatives is negative. 5 times 5 times 5 is 125 on the top, 5, 5, 5. The bottom, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So minus 125 over 8 and minus 8 are two answers. Okay, so here's a hard one. What do you do when you have a square root with an equal sign problem? Get the root alone, and then 2 power both sides. And remember, this one's going to have to be checked at the end. Any problem that starts with a root needs to be checked. So get the root alone. How am I going to do that? Well, I think the easiest thing, I'm going to grab this whole term here, jump it this way, and then the 8 jump back. So this will become x minus 8 positive 3 root 2x. That makes sense? I jumped the whole minus 3 root 2x over, became positive, and the 8 back over, negative 8. And now, so that's getting the root alone. And now you go parenthesis 2 power, parenthesis 2 power. So what does that mean? On this side, it's x minus 8, like that. The other side, it's 3 root 2x, 3 root 2x. Okay, so this side we need to FOIL. Boom, boom. x squared minus 8x, boom, boom, minus 8x plus 64. On the other side, 3 times 3 is 9. Root of 4x squared, right? 2x times 2x is in a root. So gather like terms. This is minus 16x. Now what's the square root of 4x squared? 2x. Right? Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of x squared is x. So that's x squared minus 16x plus 64 is 18x. Okay, now let's take that over. New screen here. X squared, what is it? Minus 16x plus 64 is 18x. Okay, now what are we supposed to do? Well, we're in a whole new world now. Now we've got x squared, right? X squared. What do you do when you get x squared? You know, get a 0. And you can try to factor, or if the factoring won't work, do the quadratic formula. So minus 18x from both sides. And we get x squared minus 34x, and that's 0. Now, does that thing factor? Let's give it a try. I'm going to do, well, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to be 64, add to be minus 34. So multiply to be plus 64, add to be minus 34. Well, if you take your calculator, you take 64 and you try dividing by different numbers. If you divide by 2, you'll get 32. 2 and 32. How can they add to be negative 34? The sign in the bottom goes on the bigger, Plus 2 minus 30. Oh no, both minus, Both minus. Minus 2 minus 32 adds to be negative 34, and two negatives multiply to be positive. That's it. So x minus 2, x minus 32, then each one equals 0, right? When two things are multiplying to be 0, each one is 0. Move it over. 2. They're positive 2, positive 32. Maybe. Remember, the problem started with a square root. It needs to be checked, unfortunately. So let's do it. So we've got to check the first answer, which is 2. And over here we've got to check the other answer, which is 32. Check with the original equation. X minus 3 root 2x. X minus 3 root 2x equals, what is it? 8? Yeah. 8. All right. Let's try plugging in the 2. Boom, boom. 2 minus 3 root of 2 times 2 is 8. 2 minus 3 root of 4 is 8. 2 minus the root of 4 is 2. 2 minus 6 is 8. Negative 4 is 8. No. That answer's out. Let's try the other one. X minus 3 root 2x is 8. Put in the 32, put in the 32. 32 minus 3 root of 2 times 32. 32 minus 3 root of 64. 32 minus root of 64 is 8. 32 minus 24. 8 equals 8, yes. So the only answer is 32. That was a long problem. Okay, so here we go again with y to the fourth. So what do we do with y to the fourth? What's the plan? Let w be the middle term and w squared is the front term. So this will become w, this will become w squared. So we get 8w squared plus 42, whoops, not y, w, we're changing to w, and equals 11. Okay, now we have a w squared equation. You know what to do with a w squared equation. Get a 0, right? Bring that 11 over. That's 8. Oh boy, I'm not writing it neatly here. So minus 11 equals 0. Okay, whenever there's a number in front, I just go straight to the quadratic formula. So I'm going to do that here. Quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. So let's see what we got here. So what's a, b, and c? This is a, 8 is a, 42 is b, negative 11 is c. So we get negative b, negative 42, plus or minus the square root of b squared, 42 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a, 2 times 8. Okay, so where does that leave us? So that's minus 42 plus or minus the square root. So we're going to have to do 42 squared. So let's see what we got. 1764. Plus, we got minus times plus times minus. So 2 minus is going to be plus. 352. 4 times 8 times 11. 352 all over 16. All right. So what is that? That's minus 42 plus or minus. So 352 plus 1764 is 2116 over 16. And turns out that if you square root 2116, you get 46. Nice, clean 46. Okay. So what does that mean? So let me go to a fresh screen here. This, and what equals this? This is all W, right? We're solving a W quadratic equation. So W equals what? Minus 42 plus or minus 46. Minus 42 plus or minus 46 over 16. So that's minus 42 plus 46 over 16. Okay, so let me erase that. Or minus 42 minus 46 over 16. So what is that? That's 4 over 16, right? 46 minus 42, which is 1/4. Or, and what's this one? Minus 88 over 16 divided by 8. Top and bottom is minus 11 halves. All right, so we have 2 W answers, but we're not done yet. That's W. So you know what we do next. So step 2 is solve for W, and then step 3 is to go back to Y in this case. How so? W equals Y squared, right? So we go back and we go, okay, all right, we're done with the W work. Now W is Y squared, so it's Y squared is 1/4. Or Y squared is minus 11 halves. Right? We go back to, because W all along was Y squared. We changed to W, solved the W. All this is solving W. Got W alone here. And now go back, say, okay, what is W? Y squared. What is W? Y squared. So now how do you finish solving for Y squared there? Square root, plus or minus. You put the roof on the house. Y equals plus minus square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root, plus or minus. So Y equals. A negative inside a root kicks out an I. Oops, I forgot the plus or minus there. So it's plus or minus. Okay, plus or minus I. And then square root of 11 over square root of 2. We can't leave a root on the bottom. So we multiply top and bottom by root 2, plus or minus I root 22, right? 11 times 2 over plane 2. So those are 2 answers. Those are the other 2 answers. Okay, so a jogger ran 6 miles, decreased her speed by 1 mile per hour, then ran another 7 miles. Total jogging time, 2 and 19/20 hours. Find her speed in each part. All right, it's been a while since we've done any like travel problems. Remember the equation? Distance equals rate times time. So let me go to a fresh screen, number 15 here. I'm going to write distance equals rate times time. And we have 2 boxes under each letter, 6 boxes all together, like that. All right, let's go through it. That's distance, rate, and time. So it says she ran 6 miles. Is that a distance, rate, or time? That's a distance. She ran 6 miles. Distance, 6 miles. Then she decreased her speed by 1 mile per hour and ran another 7. So 7 miles is another distance. 7 miles is another distance. She decreased her speed by 1 mile per hour. That means that's rate. Let's talk about rate. There was some kind of rate, x, and then it was decreased by 1. Does that make sense? Whenever they say decreased by 1, that's x minus 1. So you get the idea. She went 6 miles at a certain speed, call it x, and then she decreased her speed by 1, x minus 1 speed for 7 miles, right? See, x minus 1 speed for 7 hours, and x speed up there, x speed for 6 hours. Okay. So once we have 4 boxes, I don't even need to read anymore. Once I have 4 boxes, I can get the t. Remember how to do that? Because remember this is an equation. D equals r times t, and you want the 2 t boxes. How do you get t? Divide by r, huh? T is d over r. So t is d over r, 6 over x, and this t is d over r, 7 over x minus 1. Okay, now, total jogging time, 2 and 19/20 hours. Total jogging time. That's the total of those 2 boxes, right? That's the total. Add them up. The total of those 2 must be 2 and 19/20. That's what they're saying. There's our equation. Let's change that, though. 2 and 19/20. Remember how to change that? Remember how to change a mixed number? I'm going to multiply the bottom and add the top. 2 times 20 is 40. Add 19. 59/20. So I'll make this 59/20, like that. Okay. So now, now I've got a hard equation to solve. So what do you do with fractions? LCD, you multiply by the LCD. What's the LCD? All that. So we've got that denominator, that denominator, that denominator. You got to use them all. It's going to be a tough one. So multiply through by 20x and x minus 1 in the left, and then in the middle 20x, x minus 1, and then on the right 20x, x minus 1. All the way across 20x, x minus 1, left, middle, and right. And then we cancel what we can. I'm going to cancel some stuff here. So x cancels x. And what are we left with? 20 times 6, which is 120, x minus 1, right? 20 times 6 times x minus 1, 120x minus 1, plus, what happens here? X minus 1 cancels x minus 1. We're left with 20 times 7, 140x, and the x, right? Equals, what happens on the right side? 20 cancels 20, and we have 59x times x minus 1. All right, not an easy one. Let's keep going. Distribute 120x minus 120 plus 140x. Distribute here. 59x squared minus 59x. Gather like terms, 120x and 140x, was that 260x? Minus 120 is 59x squared minus 59x. Boy, this is a challenging problem. Problems are hard here at the end of the course. Let's go to the next screen. So 20x minus 120 equals 59x squared minus 59x. 59x squared minus 59x. Okay, so now we think, okay, now what? Now we have an x squared equation. What's the first step? Get a 0. You can try to factor or use the quad. So get a 0. Here's the x squareds on the right side, so I'm going to make the left side 0. So minus 260x plus 120. Minus 260x plus 120. So what does that do? Boom, boom. So we get 0 equals 59x squared minus, what is that? I don't even know. 260 and 59. These numbers are huge. Minus 319x plus 120. This is craziness. All right, so I guess we go to the quadratic formula now. Okay, quadratic formula, because I don't want to try to factor that, not with a 59 in the front. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So, okay. Let's try it. So, what's a, b, and c? This is a, this is b, and this is c. So, negative b, careful there, it's negative b, and b is itself negative, so double negative, positive. Negative 319 is going to be positive, as you know. Plus or minus the square root. Oops. Of minus 319b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Whew, this is a terrible problem. This thing just keeps going and going. Okay, double negative is positive 319 plus or minus the square root 319 squared. This is crazy. 101,761 minus, and then 4 times 59 times 120, and I'm getting 28,320 all over 2 times 59, 118. Okay, what in the world does that equal? So this is the longest problem we've done in the course, maybe. Let's see, so I'm interested to see if we can solve it here. 319 plus or minus square root. So 101,761 minus 28,320 equals 73,441. All right, another screen. Oops, kind of messing this thing up here. Okay, 319, what is it? Plus or minus square root 73,441 over 118. All right, so now if we hit the square root button on our calculator, square root of it comes out to be 271. That's nice. It makes us think, okay, maybe we're on the right track. Now we do the two options, right? When the square root disappears, remember we always do the two options. 319 plus 271 and 319 minus 271 over 118. I'm getting 590 over 118, which is 5. That's nice. The other one is 48 over 118. Divide by, I don't know, what goes into the divide by 2, I guess. 24 over 59, okay. So we get to, and what I've lost complete track of what those answers even mean? I mean, what are they? Where were we? That was x, and what was x? Well, looks like x is a rate here and here. Now, help me. Remember, we always have to stay in reality. One of those answers is craziness. Here's why. The fraction, this is about a half. If you divide this on your calculator, 24 divided by 59, it's like 0.4 something, right? So it's less than 1, isn't it? So what? Well, right here, if x, that's x. This is all x. So we're saying that can't be, because what? If x right here, see right here, is 0.4 minus 1, that would be a negative rate. 0.4 minus 1, that would be a negative rate. You can't be, negative rate. So that's, remember, math sometimes goes beyond reality. We cross off that answer. The only valid one is 5. Now, remember, in a word problem, they don't just want x. Usually, they want something else. So what's their question? The speed for the first part, the speed for the second part. Okay, so they want us to take the only valid x, the 5. The other one's not valid because it would make one of the rates negative. Take that 5, that x is 5, and they want rate first part, rate second part. That's what they want. They want the rates. So I take that 5 and go back to the rate boxes. And I put a 5 in right there for x. And I put, there's that 0.4, which wasn't going to work. In this x slot, I put a 5. Now we know x is 5. So this is 5, and this is 5 minus 1, 4. So the rate in the first part is 5. The rate in the second part is 4. There we go. That was a challenging problem. Okay, Chinese restaurant, large goldfish pond. Suppose that an inlet pipe, call that I, and a hose, call that H, together can fill a pond in 2 hours. The inlet pipe alone can complete the job 1 hour less time than the hose alone. So inlet pipe is hose minus 1. Isn't that what they're saying? The inlet can do the job 1 hour less than the hose. The inlet is hose minus 1, 1 less than the hose. Find the time. Okay, so do you remember? It's been a while. What working, so 16 and 17, and maybe we didn't even do it, I don't remember exactly. 16 and 17 are both problems where people or things are working together. Number 17 is a father and son working together. Number 16 is an inlet pipe and a hose working together to accomplish a job. Whenever you have working together problems, just like there's a special formula for travel, distance equals rate times time, that we used back here, the dirt equation, distance equals rate times time for travel, there's a special formula for working together. It's 1 over A plus 1 over B is 1 over together. So for number 16 here, it's going to be 1 over the inlet pipe plus 1 over the hose is 1 over the together, because the A and the B, the two things, are the inlet pipe and the hose. And do they tell us the together time? Oh yeah, suppose that inlet pipe and a hose together can fill the pond in 2 hours. So that's where the 2 goes. Whoops, that didn't come out so well. That's where the 2 goes. Because that's the together. Together. So there's our formula. Now, we can't have 2 letters, so here's what we do. We got this relationship right here, right? That the inlet pipe is hose minus 1. So take this right here, plug it in for inlet. It's hose minus 1. And there we have an equation with only 1 letter. So we can solve that for the hose. Let's go to a fresh screen. So 1 over, oops, hose minus 1 plus 1 over hose is a half. All right, so what do we always do with fractions? We've done a lot of these now. We multiply by the LCD. What's the LCD? Here's a denominator, here's a denominator, here's a denominator. We use all of them. All of them together make the common denominator. So it's 2h minus 1. And we put it in the left, in the middle, 2h minus 1, and on the right, 2h minus 1. We put it everywhere. Okay, so then we cancel. H minus 1 cancels h minus 1, and we just get 2h. And h cancels h, and we get 2. H minus 1 and 2 cancels 2, and we get h. H minus 1. All right, keep going. So then that's 2h. This distributes. 2h minus 2. This distributes. H squared minus h. 2h and 2h. 4h. Now, lo and behold, no surprise, we have an h squared equation. What do you do when you have h squared or x squared? Step 1, get a 0. Right? Step 2, try to factor. So I'm going to get a 0. Where am I going to get a 0? Here's h squared's on the right side. You get the 0 on the other side. So minus 4h plus 2 minus 4h plus 2 on both sides. Gonzo, gonzo, 0. And we get, oops, pen's not working very well here. H squared minus 5h, right? Because minus 1h and minus 4h plus 2. Okay, so we need to go to a fresh screen. We got an h squared equation. So 0 equals h squared minus 5h plus 2. Okay, well, that one's not going to factor. You could try. It's super hard. It's not going to factor. So I'm going to do the quad. So A is 1, B is minus 5, C is 2. So the quadratic formula, negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, 4AC all over 2A. So, negative B, now watch, B's negative, so negative in the formula and negative on the B, negative 5 plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A, okay? Okay, 2 negatives, that's positive 5 plus or minus square root of 25. Minus 4 times 1 times 2, minus 8 over 2. And so that is 5 plus or minus the square root of, what, 17 over 2? So, okay, what are we going to do with that? Well, they asked us on this problem to get a decimal. If you look back at the original question, it wants a decimal answer. So I'm going to break these up. So I'm going to go 5 plus root 17 over 2 and 5 minus root 17 over 2. So use your calculator now and get those decimals. So this one is 4.56, and the other one is 0.44. So those are my two answers. Now, what are those answers for? You can kind of forget. This was H, so this is hose and hose. They're both answers for the hose, maybe. Remember, sometimes we go beyond reality. They asked for the hose and the inlet. They want the hose and the inlet. So what's the inlet pipe? Remember, the inlet pipe right here is hose minus 1. So if the hose is 4 point, so the inlet pipe, my pen just won't quite finish it up here. The inlet pipe is hose minus 1. So plug in the hose, take 1 away, you're going to get 3.56. For this other one, if you take inlet pipe is hose minus 1 and plug in right there for the hose, you get negative, right? You'd get like, I don't know what, 0.44 minus 1. You'd get negative 0.56. And that can't be. So that hose and that inlet answer are wrong. The real ones are 4.56 and 3.56. I think they want you to round them to 4.6 and this one to 3.6. There we go. Last one, finally. A father and son clean the house in 4 hours. So this is going to be the 1 over 5, working together, plus 1 over the son equals 1 over 4. That's how we always do working together. Problems like I mentioned back here. Working together is always 1 over A plus 1 over B is 1 over together. So 1 over A plus 1 over B is 1 over together. That's how you always handle working together problems. So 1 over father plus 1 over son is 1 over 4. And then when the son works alone, it takes him 1 hour longer to clean than the dad. So the son is father plus 1. He's 1 longer than the father, right? Son works alone, takes him an hour longer. So son is father plus 1. So come back over here where son is and put in father plus 1. Right there. All right, so it's just like the last one. Let's solve it. Common denominator, which is 4f, okay, 4f, f plus 1, 4f, f plus 1, 4f, f plus 1. Okay, f cancels f. We get 4 f plus 1 plus, and here f plus 1 cancels f plus 1, 4f, and 4 cancels 4, ff plus 1. Distribute. Did you see all that canceling? And I multiplied through by the common denominator, so we get 4, 4f plus 4 plus 4f, and distribute here, f squared plus f. Okay, so we get to there, 4f and 4f is 8f plus 4. Now what are you supposed to do when you got f squared with an equal sign? Step 1, get a 0. Here we go again. So you got to get a 0. So I'm going to get rid of this stuff. Minus 8f and minus 4. Minus 8f and minus 4 from both sides. Gone, gone. 0 equals f squared minus 7f minus 4, because that's 1f minus 8f. Okay, new screen. 0 is f squared. What is it? Minus 7f minus 4. Okay, so here we go again, quadratic formula. So A is 1, B is minus 7, C is the minus 4. So negative B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay, so now negative B. Careful, B is also negative, so we got the double negative thing again. Negative 7 plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. All right, so then double negative, positive 7 plus or minus square root 49, negative, positive, negative, 2 negatives, positive, 16 all over 2. This is 7 plus or minus square root of 65 all over 2. All right, bring it up here. So it's 7 plus root 65 over 2 and 7 minus root 65 all over 2. They want you to use your calculator. Okay, I get 7.53 for this answer. And for the other one, let me see, 7 minus square root of 65 by 2. For the other one, I get negative 0.53. Okay, well, clearly, what is this? This is father time, right? Because this is F. We're solving for F. So either the father takes 7.5 hours to clean, or negative 0.5. That's amazingly fast. Throw away that answer. That's crazy. Father takes 7.5. You go back to the question. They're asking, how long does it take the son? And what's the son? Right here. Father plus 1. Father plus 1. So it takes him an hour longer to clean than it takes his dad alone. So father plus 1. So the son is 1 higher. Son is 8.5. And there's the answer to the question.